What is the price of safety? What is the cost of confidence? Every time we buckle our seatbelts at 30,000 feet, we place our trust in a system. A system of engineering, of procedure, of human skill. But that trust wasn't born from perfection. It was forged in fire, carved from tragedy, and written into history by the most devastating lessons we've ever learned. Welcome to Crush Decoded. On this channel, we don't just recount events, we deconstruct them. We analyze the mechanics of failure to understand the blueprint of safety. We delve into the stories where everything went wrong, not to sensationalize, but to decipher, to find the meaning in the madness, to honor the lost by ensuring their legacy is a safer world. Today, we are exploring the 5 worst aviation disasters on American soil. These aren't just statistics, they are profound human stories. Each one is a catastrophic puzzle that investigators painstakingly solved, and each solution fundamentally rewrote the rules of flight, transforming aviation into the safest mode of travel we have today. This is their story. Before we begin our countdown, it's crucial to understand the framework. We're ranking these events based on the number of fatalities, but the true measure of their impact isn't just in the lives lost. It's in the countless lives saved because of the changes they triggered. We'll break each one down: the story, the cause, and most importantly, the legacy. These are the crashes that echo through history. Let's begin. Number 5, the Grand Canyon. Mid-air collision, 1956. The crash that created the FAA. The story of the 5th deadliest disaster starts not with a mechanical failure, but with a promise of breathtaking beauty. It's June 30, 1956. The jet age is dawning. But the skies are a new and unregulated frontier. 2 propeller-driven airliners, a TWA Super Constellation and a United Airlines DC-7, are both on transcontinental flights to give their passengers a thrilling memory. Both pilots independently detour into the unpoliced airspace over the majestic Grand Canyon. Air traffic control at this time was primitive. Radar existed but was nowhere near comprehensive. Pilots were largely on their own, navigating by sight and paper charts. On that day, a massive thunderstorm built over the canyon. To avoid the towering cumulonimbus clouds, both pilots likely changed their altitude, seeking smoother air. In the vast, open sky of the American West, these 2 specific aircraft, on their unintended parallel paths, found each other. The mid-air collision was catastrophic and unimaginable. The DC-7 likely sliced through the Constellation's fuselage with its wing. Both aircraft broke apart, scattering wreckage across the remote canyon floor. All 128 people on board both flights perished. There were no survivors. The public was stunned. For the first time, the American people collectively questioned the safety of the booming airline industry. The outcry was immediate and furious. The government was forced to act. The legacy of this tragedy is monumental. In direct response to the public horror over the Grand Canyon disaster, Congress passed the Federal Aviation Act of 1958. This act created the body we know today as the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. This one accident led to one single agency being given ultimate authority over all U.S. airspace. It mandated the creation of a nationwide, unified air traffic control system and established strict regulations for assigning altitudes and routes. The Wild West of the skies was officially over. Number 4. American Airlines Flight 587 2001, The Tale That Let Go. The 4th disaster on our list takes us to a New York City that was still raw, still grieving. It was November 12, 2001. Just 2 months after the attacks of September 11, nerves were frayed. The world was on edge. American Airlines Flight 587, an Airbus A300, lifted off from JFK Airport bound for Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. The flight was packed with people heading home. Then, the unthinkable seemed to be happening again. Minutes after takeoff, while climbing over the Queens neighborhood of Bell Harbor, the aircraft experienced a failure so bizarre it was almost unthinkable. The plane's entire vertical stabilizer, its massive tail fin, ripped completely off from the fuselage. With its primary directional control gone, the aircraft banked sharply, lost lift, and became a falling object. It plummeted from the sky, crashing into a residential neighborhood. The impact and resulting fire killed all 260 people on board and 5 people on the ground. The initial assumption for many was terrorism, but the investigation, led by the NTSB, revealed a far more complex and tragic cause. The first officer, likely startled by wake turbulence from a larger jet that had taken off minutes before, was too aggressive and rapid on the rudder pedals. He swung the rudder back and forth, side to side, putting extreme stress on the composite materials that attached the tail to the plane. The investigation concluded that this aggressive rudder input, not terrorism, caused the lugs securing the tail fin to fracture and fail. The design of the rudder control system and the airline's training on recovering from wake turbulence were both called into question. The legacy of Flight 587 was a profound change in pilot training and aircraft design. The FAA mandated new training for pilots on how to handle wake turbulence, emphasizing minimal and measured control inputs rather than aggressive reactions. The manufacturer also redesigned the attachment points for the tail fin on similar aircraft to withstand greater stress. This tragedy became a brutal lesson in human factors and the unforgiving nature of composite material failures. Number 3. American Airlines Flight 191, 1979. The engine that rolled back. The third deadliest accident in U.S. history is a story of a maintenance shortcut with apocalyptic consequences. On May 25, 1979, American Airlines Flight 191, a McDonnell Douglas DC-10, was lining up for takeoff from Chicago O'Hare Airport. It was a routine flight to Los Angeles, its wide-body cabin filled with passengers. As the jet roared down the runway and began to lift off, something horrifying happened. Witnesses on the ground saw the left engine, a massive Pratt & Whitney turbofan, suddenly break away from the wing. But it didn't just fall. It pirouetted over the top of the wing and landed on the runway behind the climbing jet. The aircraft continued to climb, but it was mortally wounded. The engine separation had done more than just remove thrust. It had severed hydraulic lines and electrical cables and caused damage that led to the leading edge slats on the left wing retracting. This meant the left wing suddenly lost lift while the right wing was still generating it. The law of physics was unforgiving. The DC-10 rolled steeply to the left until it was almost inverted and then began to plunge back to Earth. It reached an altitude of about 300 feet before it stalled and crashed into an old aircraft hangar near a trailer park. The impact and fire were instantaneous and devastating. All 271 people on board and 2 people on the ground were killed. It remains the deadliest aviation accident on U.S. soil. The cause was traced back to a fundamental error in maintenance procedure. American Airlines, in an effort to save man-hours, had begun using a forklift to remove the engine and its pylon, the structure that connects it to the wing, as a single unit. This practice, which differed from the manufacturer's procedure, put immense stress on the pylon's attachment points. During one such procedure, a maintenance team had caused a nearly invisible crack to form in a critical pylon component. The stress of takeoff finally caused the crack to fail completely. The legacy of Flight 191 was a brutal reinforcement of strict adherence to manufacturer protocols. The entire worldwide fleet of DC-10s was grounded until every aircraft could be inspected. Maintenance procedures were overhauled globally. The FAA became far more stringent in its oversight of airline maintenance programs. The crash served as the ultimate warning. There are no safe shortcuts in aviation maintenance. Number 2. TWA Flight 800, 1996. The center tank that exploded. The second worst disaster is a story of mystery, misconception, and ultimately, a hidden flaw. On the evening of July 17, 1996, TWA Flight 800, a Boeing 747, was climbing out from New York's JFK Airport, bound for Paris, 12 minutes after takeoff. As it climbed through 13,800 feet over the Atlantic Ocean near Long Island, the aircraft suddenly vanished from radar. Then, the calls started coming in. Dozens of people on the ground and on boats reported seeing a fiery streak in the sky, like a flare, followed by a massive explosion. The initial, terrifying assumption for many was a missile, a terrorist attack. The investigation that followed was one of the most complex, expensive, and painstaking in aviation history. The FBI and NTSB worked side by side, often in conflict. The wreckage was scattered across miles of ocean floor, and investigators had to reconstruct nearly the entire aircraft in a hangar to find the truth. The breakthrough came when they identified the origin of the explosion: the center fuel tank. The tank was mostly empty, but it was full of highly flammable fuel vapors. The question was, what ignited them? After years of analysis, the official conclusion was mechanical, not criminal. The most probable cause was a short circuit in the wiring that ran through the center fuel tank. This wiring was for a fuel quantity indicator. Over time, the insulation on these wires had become brittle. The investigation suggested that a voltage surge, possibly from a nearby electric fuel pump being turned on, caused a spark in that damaged wiring. That tiny spark, in a tank full of explosive vapor, was all it took. The resulting explosion was catastrophic, tearing the nose off the aircraft and sending the rest of it into a fatal dive. The legacy of TWA Flight 800 is felt on every commercial flight today. The FAA mandated a huge suite of new regulations. Airlines had to retrofit aircraft with systems to inert fuel tanks, pumping nitrogen-rich air into them to reduce the oxygen levels and make the vapors unable to combust. Wiring standards were completely overhauled, with extensive programs to inspect and replace aging wiring bundles. This tragedy exposed a hidden vulnerability that no one had fully considered, leading to changes that made the entire fleet safer. Number 1. The crash of PSA Flight 182, 1978. The tragedy of See and Avoid. And now, the single deadliest aviation disaster in U.S. history. A collision that didn't happen in the remote wilderness, but in the heart of a major city, witnessed by thousands. It was a bright, sunny morning in San Diego on September 25, 1978. Pacific Southwest Airlines, PSA Flight 182, a Boeing 727, was on final approach. It was a routine flight, the cabin relaxed. In the same airspace was a small Cessna 172, with 2 pilots practicing instrument flying. Air traffic control warned the PSA crew about the small traffic ahead of them. The PSA crew acknowledged they even spotted the Cessna. The last transmission from the cockpit included the fateful words, "We're looking for him. We had him there a minute ago." They had seen the Cessna, but then lost sight of it. The Cessna had slid into a blind spot below the 727's cockpit windshield. Relying on the outdated See and Avoid principle, the PSA pilots believed the threat had passed. It hadn't. The 2 aircraft were on a perfect collision course. The Cessna slammed into the 727's right wing. The small plane was obliterated. The 727, critically wounded and on fire, banked sharply and began a death spiral. It did not crash in a field or in the water. It plowed directly into the heart of a working-class San Diego neighborhood. The collision, crash, and resulting fireball killed all 135 people on both aircraft and 7 people on the ground. The horror was witnessed live by a city. The death toll of 144 remains the highest in U.S. aviation history. The cause was a tragic cascade of errors. The PSA crew lost situational awareness. The air traffic controllers, using limited technology, failed to provide an updated warning. The system itself, relying on pilots in busy airspace to see a small speck out there window, was fatally flawed. But the legacy of PSA Flight 182 is one of the most significant on this list. This collision was the final, horrific catalyst for the development and mandatory implementation of the Traffic Collision Avoidance System, or TAS. This technology allows aircraft to electronically see each other. It gives pilots direct, audible instructions, descend, or climb, to avoid conflict. It took the responsibility out of human eyes and put it into fail-safe computers. Today, TAS is standard on every commercial airliner globally, and it has prevented countless mid-air collisions. It is the direct and hard-learned answer to the tragedy of PSA Flight 182. These 5 disasters represent profound, heart-wrenching tragedies. Hundreds of lives were lost, families were shattered, and communities were forever scarred. But from the wreckage of each one, investigators, engineers, and regulators painstakingly pieced together the causes. They refused to let the lessons be forgotten. The safety we experience every time we fly, the rigorous checks, the redundant systems, the constant training, was built on these hard-learned lessons. They are the reason flying is the safest form of travel in human history. Each regulation is a memorial. Each safety procedure is a promise to those who were lost that their passing meant something. This is the core of Crush Decoded. We decode the failure to honor the fix. We remember the tragedy to respect the progress. If this journey through history resonated with you, if you understand now how safety is earned, then share this video with someone. Help spread the understanding. Make sure these lessons are never forgotten. Like this video, subscribe to Crush Decoded, and hit the notification bell, because we have so many more stories to decode. Until next time.